Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into the Philly Sports Power Hour on this beautiful Friday in December. Happy Friday to my Power Hour crew. Philadelphia Flyers just keep on winning and collecting points. We're going to talk about the Flyers today. It's our Football Friday. No game on Sunday for the Eagles. So we'll take a look around the NFL, some games we should be looking out for on Sunday. Some things we'd like to see as Eagles fans happen on Sunday. And then we'll take a look ahead at the Monday Night Football matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. But I appreciate my Power Hour crew on this Football Friday. Let's get a little roll call in the chat. And we are also live streaming on TikTok. So for my TikTok crew, welcome to the Philly Sports Power Hour. If you want to engage, you could also go to YouTube, JAKIB Sports, JAKIB. We are streaming live like we do every day from 10 to 11. But a little roll call in the chat. I see Wine Niners Wine here as always. Good to see you, my brother. We got Bobby Murphy, Jared Ford, Twiz in the house. Dank Kelly Green Burrito. It has been a long time. Thanks for coming back to the Power Hour, my friend. Annette, good morning to you. James Carpenter joining from Twitter. Chuck Hutton, Bowner Johnson, WCBJJ in the house, bringing his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to the Power Hour. Thunderbird, Mike Fittery, Adams Exploits, Iceberg Slim. If I missed you, I apologize, but it is good to see everybody here on the Power Hour. And we're going to get into football in a second because it is our Football Friday, but you know I can't not mention our Philadelphia Flyers. And I won't spend too much time talking hockey. I know a lot of you guys are not hockey fans, but we can't ignore what this Philadelphia Flyers team is doing. And this is a quote from Cam Atkinson after last night's shootout win. Cam Atkinson has been in the NHL for 13 years. And this is what he had to say about this Philadelphia Flyers team. I've been in this league 13 years, and this is one of the, if not the, most special groups I've been a part of. I've been telling you guys, now is the time to turn back to this Philadelphia Flyers team. The expectations were low coming into this season. I did not expect them to be sitting here, number 3 in the Metropolitan Division. Tied for number 2. They just played more games. But this team plays really, really hard. They win again last night, 4-3 over the Washington Capitals. Washington Capitals are a good team. A really good team. They beat the Washington Capitals in a shootout. Who remembers, if you guys are Flyers fans, how bad this team used to be in shootouts? They're now 3-0 this season in the shootout. Sam Ersson, the backup goaltender, unstoppable in the shootout. Or should I say unbeatable? He's stopping everything. Did give up a goal to TJ Oshie, who's just so damn good. You guys remember the Olympics a few years back. Him winning the gold for the United States of America with how good he was in the shootout. But they were down. This team just battles, man. They just battle. They're down 2-1 in the third. Score a goal to make it 2-2. They then go down 3-2 in the third. They tie it up with only 2:59 left. They play really good defense. That's now points in 8 out of their last 9 games. 6-1-2 in their last 9. In their last 16 games, so going back to November 10th, they are 11-3-2. That's 24 points since November 10th, the best in the National Hockey League. So when I'm telling you guys, it's time to turn your focus back to the Philadelphia Flyers, it is time. They play a good defensive game of hockey. Number 8 in the league in goals against. Number 5 in the league in penalty kill. So if you want to watch this Flyers team, Saturday night, they host the Detroit Red Wings, who are 15-10-4. So take a look. But I won't spend too much time on hockey. I know we're not all hockey fans. I know Wine Niners Wine's a big hockey fan. And he's been calling for a Flyers podcast. We may need to make that happen. We may need to make that happen because this team is good. My only question, I was talking to my producer, Xander, before we came live on the air, saying the only question I have with this Flyers team is what do they do as the trade deadline approaches? Because if you listen to Danny Briere get interviewed last week, he said the plan has not changed. This is not a team where they just want to get into the playoffs and be a middle-of-the-road team. They want to be able to compete for Stanley Cups year after year after year. You listen to that, they may trade away some talent at the trade deadline. They may look towards the future. And I'm torn on what they should do because this team has a lot of good chemistry. They're playing really hard. But I do agree with Danny Briere. This is not a one-and-done type team. You don't want this team to just get into the playoffs. We want to see them compete for Stanley Cups for an extended period of time. So it'll be interesting what this team does at the trade deadline with some of the talent that they have. I wouldn't get rid of TK. Travis Konechny, I'd keep him. I'd even keep Sean Couturier. I know he's getting older, but I think you need to build around guys like Couturier just for the culture and the chemistry. Because you saw what happened with the 76ers. When they went through their process where they were just losing games time and time again, you start to breed a losing culture in your locker room. So you got to walk that fine line of building for the future, but continuing a winning culture. But we'll move on from hockey. We will move on from hockey. It is our Football Friday. But before we go ahead and take a look around the NFL, because there was a crazy Thursday night football game last night, I want to talk about, you guys know we end every show with a Today in Sports History, and there'll be another Today in Sports History at the end of the show. But I can't ignore what happened today in Philadelphia sports history. And if you're here in the chat following along, who remembers or knows what happened on December 15th, 1968? Something I hate to even talk about because it is brought up by every national media outlet anytime something happens with our Philadelphia fans. Who in the chat knows what happened? And I see on TikTok, Sagboy Keem knows what happened today. But who on YouTube streaming live knows what happened December 15th, 1968? And if you're a Philadelphia fan, especially an Eagles fan, you know what I'm talking about. And there it is. Dank Kelly Green Burrito says, ho, ho, ho. And Twiz right underneath of him, Santa. Today, in 1968, was the infamous snowball game where Philadelphia Eagles fans threw snowballs at Santa Claus. Something that ESPN and Fox and CBS and every other damn national media outlet loves to throw in our face anytime something happens with a Philadelphia fan. So I wanted to go back, and I'm sure some of you guys have heard the story. I'm sure some of you know the truth behind the infamous snowball game. But I wanted to go back, and I wanted to just remind you of what basically happened that year. So first of all, it was the last game of the season. The Philadelphia Eagles were having a dreadful year that year. They were 2-11. But what made it worse is not only were they 2-11, they started the season 0-11. And the hopes were that this Philadelphia Eagles team was going to get the number 1 draft pick. And an interesting fact, the player they wanted to draft with the number 1 draft pick was O.J. Simpson. We're getting a little O.J. Simpson reference on the Power Hour today. But the Philadelphia Eagles win 2 games in a row, so now they're 2-11. They can't get the number 1 draft pick. There was a big snowstorm the night before the game. The real Santa they booked couldn't make it to the game because of the snowstorm. The Eagles fans in attendance are freezing their asses off, watching a dreadful team who now can't even get O.J. Simpson in the draft, and they don't have a Santa. So they go to the crowd, and they get a 20-year-old kid who was dressed up as Santa to come to the game, who was probably drunk off his ass from tailgating, in a dreadful costume, and they bring him onto the field. He was supposed to be on a float. He was supposed to be on this beautiful float with elves being wheeled into the stadium. Well, the float got stuck in the mud. So there was one thing after another. Now the float's stuck in the mud. So now the Santa needs to walk out. And he doesn't have a Santa sack filled with toys. He's got an old equipment bag filled with dirty-ass towels. And he comes out now to a fan base that has struggled all season long watching this dreadful team, to a fan base that saw this team finally win games to ruin their chance at getting O.J. Simpson with the number 1 draft pick. They've seen a horrible, dreadful Santa walk out because he can't even come out on a float, who's drunk off his ass, who's got an equipment bag filled with towels. So they threw snowballs at him. And we're now going on, how many years has it been since 1968, but yet every national media outlet has to bring up the snowball game. So I felt, as much as I didn't want to talk about it, I felt we needed to all hear what the real story was when we threw snowballs at Santa Claus, when we booed Santa Claus in Philadelphia. So that's a little today in sports history, but we'll end the show like we do every day with another today in sports history. But it is Football Friday. So let's take a look around the NFL, because the Philadelphia Eagles game gets flexed from Sunday to Monday Night Football. The first time the NFL has ever flexed a Monday Night Football game. And it's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles at Seattle. And we're going to break down that game. Eagles haven't played well in Seattle. They've never beaten Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll is 6-0 against the Philadelphia Eagles with the Seattle Seahawks. He did lose when he was coach of the New England Patriots, but Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks have never lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. So we will break down that game later on in the show. But because that game gets flexed to Monday night, we now get to sit around on Sunday and watch all of the NFL games. Get to watch 7 hours of commercial-free football on the Red Zone. My favorite part of the Red Zone is the witching hour, where losses become wins and wins become losses. But I don't get the benefit of being able to sit there and watch the Red Zone as much anymore, because I got to do the JAKIB Sports game day shows, which I love. It's not a chore. It is a lot of fun being down there with Seth Joyner and Mark Farzetta and the rest of the crew. But I don't usually get to watch the Red Zone all day. And I get reminded in the chat by Wine Niners Wine, this is the weekend Saturday games start as well. So now you get an entire weekend. You get Saturday to watch the NFL. You get Sunday to watch the Red Zone. And then you get to sit around all day on Monday at work, anxiously waiting for the Monday Night Football game. So make sure you're here Monday at 10 o'clock on the Power Hour, getting ready for Monday Night Football. And then you'll check in on the JAKIB Sports pregame show as well for me, Mark Farzetta, Seth Joyner, and John McMullen. But let's take a look around the NFL. There was a game last night. And if you guys were on the show yesterday, I talked about yesterday Was this Bill Belichick's last year in New England? And we talked about the report coming out of New England that Robert Kraft has already made up his mind that at the end of the season, they're going to part ways. And there was included in that report that there may even be a trade of Bill Belichick to another team. And we talked about yesterday, would Bill Belichick go to another team? Because if he was going to go to another team at this point in his career, at 70 years old, it would have to be a team that could win right away. It would have to be a team that had a good young franchise quarterback, that had enough skilled players, had enough playmakers on defense that could compete. And I said yesterday, the one team that I could see Bill Belichick going to this late into his career at this age would be the Los Angeles Chargers. And we talked about Brandon Staley, in my opinion, is one of the worst coaches in the NFL. Said that yesterday on the show. Did anybody watch the Thursday night football game last night? If there was ever a doubt that Brandon Staley is the worst coach in the NFL, it was on full display last night against the Las Vegas Raiders. You're talking about a Raiders team that was shut out the week before. 0 points against the Minnesota Vikings. They put up 42 points in the first half last night against the Los Angeles Chargers. And I know Justin Herbert is done for the season. I know it's hard to win in this league with your backup quarterback. But what you saw last night from the Los Angeles Chargers was a team that has completely given up. A team that doesn't want to play for their head coach. A team that has completely checked out. And the final score in that game, 63-21. 42-0 at halftime, and they put up 63 points. And it could have been even worse than that. Could have been even worse. That team wants no parts of playing for Brandon Staley. And now the question for me is no longer, does Brandon Staley get fired at the end of the season? It's whether or not he even makes it to the end of the season. You may get a report coming out of Los Angeles today that they've moved on from Brandon Staley. A performance like that on national TV, Thursday Night Football, Amazon Prime, you may not survive 24 hours. And you look at Brandon Staley, it's not like he's done anything in his career that would warrant them giving him another shot. 24-24 in his career. Wasting Justin Herbert. And I see people in the chat saying the same thing. Wasting Justin Herbert. They need to move on from Brandon Staley. And if you've ever watched a Chargers game, you see the horrible decisions this guy makes in games. So not only does he have a team that doesn't want to play for him, he's a coach that just makes bad in-game decisions. Really bad. I said it last season that I felt the Los Angeles Chargers win games in spite of their head coach. So I'd be shocked if he lasts the rest of this season. I think he's gone today. I really do. If I'm Dean Spanos, Los Angeles Chargers, I'm moving on now. But then the question becomes, who replaces him? And keep your eyes on Bill Belichick, because that would be a really interesting head coach for this Los Angeles Chargers team. I'm not sure, though, that the Patriot way is going to work anymore. I'm not sure that Bill Belichick will have any sustained success anywhere he goes. But I do think the best opportunity for him to go somewhere to have an impact would be this Los Angeles Chargers team. But guys, I appreciate you all being here. I see you in the chat. I am loving it. Hit that like button, hit that share button. We are not only on YouTube today, we are live streaming on TikTok. So I appreciate the whole TikTok crew being here as well. So let's take a look around the NFL. That was the game last night, 63-21. Absolute embarrassment. And before I move on from that game, we talk about Brandon Staley and him not maybe even making it past today. What do you think about the job Antonio Pierce is doing in Vegas? Do you think he's done enough to be the next head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders? Because he does have that team playing hard after the disaster that Josh McDaniels was. Another Patriot way guy. Antonio Pierce has them playing hard. What you saw last night was you saw one team that doesn't want to play for their coach with the Los Angeles Chargers, and you saw another team that wants to give everything they have for their head coach. So I'd love to see them give Antonio Pierce a shot at getting a full offseason as being the head coach. But I appreciate everybody here. Let's take a look around. This is our Football Friday. Before we turn our focus to the Monday Night Football game, let's look at some of these other games. So you got 3 games on Saturday, 1 o'clock, 4:30, and 8:15. So all day Saturday, you get NFL football. First up, you have the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. And this game is big for both teams in the playoff picture. Because if the season ended today, the Vikings would be the 6th seed at 7-6. But there are 5 teams at 6 and 7, only a game back of the Vikings for the wild card. So big game for them. And the Cincinnati Bengals are right now 7-6, tied with the Steelers and the Colts in the wild card. But they're on the outside looking in. And there are 6 teams at 7-6. You got the Bills, the Broncos, the Texans, the Colts, the Steelers are all at 7-6. It's like nobody has really separated themselves in the NFL this year outside of the few teams at the top. There is a lot of parity across the NFL. But you get that game, Cincinnati and Minnesota. And when the season started, you thought you were going to get Kirk Cousins going up against Joe Burrow. Well, now you get Jake Browning going up against Nick Mullins. The Vikings have decided to no longer give the starting job to Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs was a great story. I know we were all pulling for him. I was pulling for him. And I think some of the problem that you saw with the Minnesota Vikings offense had less to do with Josh Dobbs and more to do with Kevin O'Connell, their head coach, trying to force a square peg into a round hole. What Josh Dobbs was good at, what he excels in, is not the type of offense that the Minnesota Vikings want to run. You look at Kirk Cousins and you look at Josh Dobbs, they're different quarterbacks. And I think Kevin O'Connell was trying to force Josh Dobbs to be Kirk Cousins instead of building an offense around Josh Dobbs. And as Eagles fans, we all remember 2017. We all remember how incredible it was when Nick Foles came in. Frank Reich, Doug Peterson, John DeFilippo built an offense around Nick Foles, changed the way they called plays, instituted the RPO that Nick Foles was excellent at running, and it led to a Super Bowl. Good coaches build their system around their players. They don't force their players into their system. And that's where I think Kevin O'Connell made a mistake with Josh Dobbs. But you look at this game, Jake Browning going up against Nick Mullins. The advantage has to go to the Cincinnati Bengals. And you look at the spread, Bengals are 3.5-point favorites. I think they win that game easily against the Minnesota Vikings. Jake Browning's actually playing pretty well for a backup, and they need that game. Big game for Cincinnati. I think they take that one on Saturday at 1 o'clock. The only thing that annoys me about these Saturday games sometimes is it's not easy to make time on a Saturday at 1 o'clock. I mean, if you guys have kids, I got kids. It's tough sometimes to be able to make time to sit on the couch all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then a Monday night football game after just watching a Thursday night football game. So as much as I love the NFL, and I wish it was on all the time, it's hard to make time to watch all these damn games. So what I do sometimes is I'll DVR it, and then I won't look online at the score, go back and watch it and, fast forward through commercials and things. But all right, the next game on Saturday, 4:30, the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Indianapolis Colts. And just like that Vikings-Bengals game where we thought we were getting Joe Burrow and Kirk Cousins, well, look at the Steelers game. You thought you were going to get Kenny Pickett going up against Anthony Richardson when the season started. Well, now you're getting Mitch Trubisky versus Gardner Minshew. Minshew mania running wild in Indianapolis. And that game is in Indianapolis. And again, important for playoff positioning. Both teams need that win. And you look at the spread, Colts are only 1.5-point favorites in Indianapolis. That line surprises me a little bit. I would have thought the Colts would have been a lot higher favorites in that football game because I think Mitch Trubisky stinks. I think he absolutely stinks. But odds makers don't have a lot of faith in this Indianapolis Colts team. But I'm taking the Colts in that game. I think Gardner Minshew and the Colts, Shane Steichen, good head coach, great play caller. I think they'll do enough to win that football game. So I'm going with both favorites. I'm taking the Bengals covering the 3.5-point spread. I'm going with the Colts covering the 1.5-point spread. And then an interesting game for Eagles fans on Saturday night. The Detroit Lions, who look like they have hit a wall, haven't been playing great over the last few weeks. We talk about a lot in the NFL. You don't want to peak too early. You want to be playing your best football when you're headed into the playoffs. And the Detroit Lions are playing anything but their best football right now. Coming off a loss to Chicago, almost blowing a game against the New Orleans Saints the week before. And they got to play the Denver Broncos, who are a scary team. People, if you haven't been paying attention, everyone thinks of the Denver Broncos, thinks about the 70 points they gave up to the Miami Dolphins in the beginning of the year. They have been a different team. They're sitting here at 7-6, have a real shot to make the playoffs. This game is in Detroit, and that's going to be an interesting one. The Lions are 4.5-point favorites in that game, coming off of a tough loss in Chicago, and they need this game. The Detroit Lions need this game, not so much for the playoff picture. They're 9-4. There's really nobody in their division that I think can catch them. I know the Minnesota Vikings are 7-6, but I think the Lions will win the NFC North easily. But they need this game for their mojo. Like I said, you want to be playing your best football down the stretch, and they've been stumbling. So I do think the Detroit Lions come out and win this game. But I may take the Broncos with the points in that game. I think this game is going to be a close one. I could see the Broncos stealing a win. I'm not predicting that, but I could see them stealing a win. But I think this is going to be a close game. I think the Lions probably pull it out, but I don't think they're going to cover that 4.5-point spread. So we'll see. But as Eagles fans, that's a game to look out for because you may see the Detroit Lions in the playoffs. We still don't know how the seeding is going to line up. Are the Eagles going to win the NFC East? They could still backdoor their way into a 1 seed depending on what the 49ers do down the stretch. So Detroit Lions, that's a game. Sit back and watch because you may see the Detroit Lions in January. But guys, we are going to take a quick break. This is the Philly Sports Power Hour, streaming live on YouTube and on TikTok. We're live every day at 10 o'clock, Monday through Friday. So be sure to hit that like button, hit that share button. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of these other NFL games this weekend on Sunday, and then we'll turn our focus to Monday Night Football, Eagles, Seahawks. We'll be right back, guys.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back in to the Philly Sports Power Hour on this Football Friday. As always, I'm your host, Bill Colarulo. Appreciate everybody here in the live chat on YouTube. Also appreciate all of you here live on TikTok. Go ahead, hit that like button for me. Hit that share button for me. And we'll be coming back on Monday, 10 o'clock, being able to talk to you guys on an Eagles game day, which is great. Usually we do all of our Eagles stuff and our preview on Friday. I give you guys my prediction, but I get to come to you on Monday for a game day. So you'll have me Monday, 10 o'clock on the Power Hour, and then again, probably around 6:30 at night on the JAKIB Sports pregame show. So we'll really dive deep into the Seahawks, but we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. But I want to continue to look around the NFL. And if you guys weren't here earlier, on YouTube, you could go back when the show's over. I gave you a little history about the infamous Santa Claus snowball incident, which happened today in history on 1968, December 15th, 1968. And I gave you a little history about why that is so overblown by the national media. But let's continue our look around the NFL. Sunday, one of the worst games of the day, in my opinion, the Atlanta Falcons on the road at the 1-12 Carolina Panthers. And what a dumpster fire the Panthers have become with their owner firing Frank Reich, then them cleaning house, getting rid of Deuce Staley, who we all know and love here in Philadelphia. And it just seems like Dave Tepper is an owner you don't want to play for. You don't want to coach for. Guy seems like he's an egomaniac. And there's a reason why. When you look around the NFL, there is a reason why certain organizations continue to be successful year after year and other organizations continue to struggle year after year. It's like any good business. You have to build a good culture, and that all starts at the top. And if Dave Tepper is the guy that he appears to be, at least in his press conferences and the things that have been reported, they don't have a good culture in Carolina. So I don't expect things to turn around soon for them. And it's unfortunate because Bryce Young, promising young quarterback coming out of college this year, number 1 overall pick, it's not hard to see why he's probably struggling there with all the stories that are coming out between the struggles in the locker room and the coaching staff and the battles. It's just very disorganized. So they are, what's the spread in that game for the Falcons and the Panthers? Surprisingly, this is how bad the damn Falcons are. Falcons are only 3-point favorites on the road in Carolina. And the Falcons are currently tied with the Bucs for first place in the NFC South. The NFC South is horrible, man. The leading team in the NFC South is the Tampa Bay Bucs at 6-7. And you saw this last year too. And this brings up another question I have with the NFL. Just because you win your division, should you host a playoff game? Curious if you guys are here in the chat. Should you host a playoff game? I am in full agreement that if you win the division, you should get a playoff spot. I think you should be rewarded for winning your division. It's not easy to win your division. But the question is, should they also host the playoff game? Because what's going to happen this season? Whoever loses the NFC East, whether it is the Philadelphia Eagles or the Dallas Cowboys, who we'll talk about in a second, they are going to be your 5 seed. And as a 5 seed, they're going to have to play the NFC South winner. So you're going to get a team that's 13-4, 12-5, having to go on the road and play a team that was maybe 8-9. So do you think that the 8-9 team should host that playoff game? Like I said, I'm all in agreement that a division winner should get into the playoffs. But do you think it's right that an 8-9 team should host a 13-4 team in the playoffs? And I see Wine Niners Wine in the chat saying, yes, win the division, win home field. I see Godfrey Wilson. Rules are rules. It allows the nation to see other markets we normally see. Darius Young, appreciate it. My voice was made to do this podcast. I appreciate that, Darius. Fat, I can't say your name. I'm just going to call you Fat. Would rather lose the division. It's an easier road. Let's take a look at that. So Fat makes an interesting point. Would the Eagles be better off losing the NFC East? Because if the Philadelphia Eagles lose the NFC East, they will open up on the road, though. But they will open up on the road in either Tampa, Atlanta, or even New Orleans, because all 3 of those teams absolutely suck. All 3 of those teams are 6-7, and none of them want to win the NFC South. They keep trying to give it to each other. So you'd open up on the road. And then what would happen as a 5 seed if you were to win that game, assuming all the other favorites win? So the Cowboys would be the 2 seed. The Lions would be the 3 seed. Assuming they all win, your next game as a 5 seed would be on the road in San Francisco, who would have a bye as the number 1 seed. So I don't necessarily agree with you, Fat, that that's an easier road because you'd have to play the 49ers most likely coming off of their bye. Now, if the 6 or 7 seed was to upset the Cowboys or the Lions, well, now you don't go on the road to San Francisco. You would play either the Cowboys or the Lions, depending on which team was to get upset. So it's an interesting argument. I kind of like being the 2 seed. If the Eagles win the NFC East, they wouldn't get a bye. Remember, only one team gets the bye now, the way the playoffs shake out. No longer the top 2. Only the top seed gets the bye. So if the Eagles do get the number 2 seed, they would open up either against the Packers or the Vikings, maybe even the Rams. depending on how the season shakes out. And then they would host another game the week after, which could be the Cowboys as the 5 seed, but most likely it would be the Detroit Lions that you'd probably host as that number 2 seed. So I think that's the easier road. I think the easier road isn't losing the division. The easier road may be not getting the 1 seed, because you may be able to avoid having to beat both the Cowboys and the 49ers. If you're the 1 seed, you may have to play the Cowboys in the division round, the Niners in the NFC Championship. Now, the luxury would be both of those games would be home at Lincoln Financial Field. But if you're the 2 seed, the most likely scenario is you would only have to play one of those teams, not both, with the way the seeding would probably shake out. But we could take a look at that. There's a lot more to this season, a lot more to this season. And I want to talk about it. I talked about it yesterday of what I want to see from this Eagles team over the next 4 games to give me any sort of hope that they could beat either the Cowboys or the 49ers, regardless if it's in Dallas, San Francisco, or even at Lincoln Financial Field. Because there's things I need to see from this Eagles team to give me hope that they can even compete with those 2 teams after what we've seen the last 2 weeks. But we'll get there. Let's continue our look around the NFL on Sunday. We talked about the Falcons and the Panthers. You got the Bears in Cleveland against the Browns. I think the Browns win that game. They're only a 3-point favorite, but I think they win that game. I think they cover. Their defense is just so damn good. But, hey, Justin Fields playing some decent football. But I think they'll cover in that game. Browns need this one as well for playoff seeding. Chicago's got no shot to make the playoffs. Then you got the Bucs and the Packers, which is an interesting game. Both teams trying to get into the playoffs. Jordan Love and the Packers playing decent football. That game is in Green Bay. They're coming off that big win against the Kansas City Chiefs. So you got the Green Bay Packers. What's the spread in that game? Packers are 3.5-point favorites against the Bucs. I think they win that game. That game's at Lambeau Field, so I think they win that game for sure. And we only have an hour, guys, so I want to go quickly through this so we could talk a little bit about the Seahawks and the Eagles. Jets at the Dolphins, 1 o'clock. Zach Wilson coming off his best game as a pro. Can he keep it going? I don't think so. I think you'll see Zach Wilson come back to earth. I think you'll see the Miami Dolphins dominate that game. Dolphins are what's the spread in that game? 9.5-point favorite. 9.5 points. Embarrassing for the Jets. But I think the Dolphins crush them. I never like betting games like that, though, when the spread is so high, because you just don't know. You just don't know. There could be a last-minute score that changes everything. So I'd stay away from that game, unless you're playing the money line, but the money line's probably outrageous. What is the money line in that game? Yeah, minus 455, so probably not worth it. Not worth the risk. Juice isn't worth the squeeze on that one. Continuing our look around the NFL, 1 o'clock, you got the Chiefs and the Patriots. Chiefs should dominate that game. Patriots absolutely stink. Absolutely stink. And then as Eagles fans, one of the games to watch in the 1 o'clock hour would be the Giants and the Saints. Can Tommy Cutlets keep it going? Can Tommy Cutlets keep the magic going? Eagles are going to be on a short week, playing the Giants next week, playing Tommy Cutlets next week. So that's a game to watch to see what this Giants team can do. Giants are 6-point dogs in that game. That's a big spread because I think the Saints stink. So it's interesting. Vegas has no hopes for Tommy Cutlets. That game is in New Orleans, but Giants are 6-point dogs. See what happens in that game. What else we got tomorrow? 4 o'clock, you got for Sunday, 49ers and the Cardinals. I think there's no chance that the Cardinals beat the Niners. You never know on any given Sunday. But could the 49ers lay an egg? It is in Arizona. Be great for Eagles fans. I'm not expecting it. I'm not predicting it, but I'm certainly hoping for it. Because if you guys follow me on Instagram, I talked about 3 things, and I mentioned it yesterday on the Philly Sports Power Hour, but 3 things that I need to see the rest of the way over the next 4 weeks to bring back hope for me that this Philadelphia Eagles team can get to a Super Bowl again. And the 3 things, one of them has nothing to do with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's all about the San Francisco 49ers. And that one thing is I need to see the 49ers stumble a little down the stretch. I need to see that this 49ers team is human, that they are, in fact, beatable. Because since they lost 3 in a row without Trent Williams and without Deebo Samuel, this 49ers team has looked unstoppable. They look like they can't be beaten. The NFL power rankings look like it is the 49ers at the top and then a massive drop-off to number 2. So I just need to see them start to stumble. I talked about it earlier with the Detroit Lions, how you want to be playing your best football down the stretch. Well, right now the 49ers are playing their best football. I'd like to see that change. I'm praying for that to change. Does it happen this week against the Arizona Cardinals? Probably not. Could it happen next week against the Baltimore Ravens? More likely. But this 49ers team just looks so damn good. But that's a game to watch at 4:05. They're probably huge favorites in that game. Let's see what the spread is in that game. What do we got here? 49ers, 12-point favorites on the road in Arizona. But maybe, just maybe, Jonathan Gannon, our old friend, can do us a favor and upset the 49ers. Not expecting it, but certainly wishing for it. Then you got the Washington Commanders and the LA Rams. Big game for the Rams. They're still trying to fight their way into a playoff spot. We'll see what happens in that game, but the Rams are 6.5-point favorites against the Washington Commanders. Still surprised their head coach, Ron Rivera, has a job. Thought that they would have moved on from him before the season, but I think Rams probably win that game easily, but you never know with the Rams team. They've been kind of up and down all season. Godfrey Wilson, the number 1 San Francisco 49ers stumble, is human and beatable. That's what I want to see, Godfrey. That's what I'm praying for. Godfrey Wilson, that is what I am praying for, man. And we'll talk about the other things I need to see from this Eagles team. That's the only one that has nothing to do with the Eagles, that they can't control. Then at 4:25, this is the game of the day for Eagles fans. This is what we all should be tuned in for on Sunday at 4:25. And that is the Dallas Cowboys on the road against the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are only a 2-point favorite in upstate New York. We need the Bills to beat the Dallas Cowboys. I know they still have some other tough games. Cowboys don't have an easy schedule down the stretch. But it would go a long way if the Buffalo Bills could beat those Dallas Cowboys, especially if the Philadelphia Eagles can pull out a win on Monday night, retake the lead in the NFC East. Because we just talked about it a few minutes ago on the show. Some people saying they'd rather lose the division. I disagree. At the very least, the Eagles need to win the NFC East to be that number 2 seed. I don't like the road to the Super Bowl if you're a 5 seed. I like it a hell of a lot better if you're a 2 seed. But that is the game of the week. Buffalo and Dallas. And I see people saying Josh Allen's going to go off. Let's hope Josh Allen goes off. The one positive is the Dallas Cowboys are a completely different team on the road than they are at home. If you guys follow the show, I gave you the stats last week leading up to the Cowboys-Eagles game about how good that Cowboys offense is in Dallas at AT&T Stadium. They are nowhere near as good on the road. So I'm rooting for the Bills If I'm a betting man, I'm taking the Bills -2. But I'm certainly rooting for the Bills because that is, for us as Eagles fans, the game of the week to watch on Sunday. And then Sunday night, another good game. Doesn't really have ramifications for the Eagles, but we've talked about it before on the show. I will always root for Doug Peterson. And he's got a big game on Sunday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. And the Jags need this game. You talk about playing your best football down the stretch. The Jags need to play tough in this football game against the Ravens, who I think are the best team in the AFC. And that game's in Jacksonville. But as expected, the Ravens are favorites. They are 3.5-point favorites. But looking ahead, would love to see the Jaguars beat the Ravens. So then the Ravens have to bounce back next week against the San Francisco 49ers. So always looking at everything through Eagles-colored glasses. Baltimore goes to San Francisco next week. So I'd love to see Dougie P beat the Ravens. Good for Dougie P. And I think it'd be good for Eagles fans because the Ravens now would be ready to bounce back in a big way in a big game against the San Francisco 49ers. But that's kind of the look around the NFL on Saturday and Sunday. Remember, there are 3 Saturday games this week, so don't be surprised. But now we can turn our focus a little bit for a couple of minutes to Monday Night Football. And we'll do a deeper dive on Monday here on the Philly Sports Power Hour at 10 o'clock. So make sure you tune in on Monday at 10. We'll spend pretty much the whole show talking about Eagles, Seahawks in Seattle. But this isn't going to be an easy game. It's never easy to go to Seattle and win, especially for the Philadelphia Eagles. They have not done a good job on the road in Seattle. I'm kind of looking at their last couple of games. Last year, November 30th, in Seattle, not last year. The last time they played was 2020. November 30th, 2020, they lost on the road in Seattle, 23-17. Year before, in Seattle, 17-9. Then they lost 2 straight at home. You go back to December 7th, 2014, lost 24-14 at Seattle. They have not won in Seattle since 1989. Is that accurate? They have not won in Seattle since 1989. My God, I didn't realize it was that bad. I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was that bad. And like I said earlier on the show, they've never beaten the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll. They've beaten Pete Carroll before when he was the head coach of New England, and they've beaten the Seattle Seahawks before, going all the way back to 2008. But they've lost 6 in a row against the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll. So not going to be an easy game for this Eagles team. But I talked about it yesterday. I posted a video on my Instagram and here on TikTok at Legal Hands to the Face. The 3 things that I need to see from this team down the stretch. And we talked about one of them a few minutes ago. That's the 49ers stumbling. But the other 2 have to do with the Eagles. And it needs to start on Monday night. They have to show us that this is a team that has a chance to go back to the Super Bowl. And the first thing, and this would be a great week to do it, is I need to see the Philadelphia Eagles offense dominate. They can't come out anymore to slow starts where they're putting up 7 or less points in the first half, which we've now seen for 4 straight games. 7 or less points in the first half. This Eagles offense has to show us that they have the ability to put up over 30 points. I want to see them put up over 30 points every damn game for the rest of the season. I need 30-point games over the next 4, every single one of them. This offense has to show that they're firing on all cylinders. They have to establish the run. They have to establish the run early. They have to get back to the RPO. They have to spread the ball around. They have to do a better job against the zero blitz. And they need to put up over 30 points on Monday night. And we'll dive into the matchups on Monday, but you look at this Seattle Seahawks defense, and they are not good. This is not the Legion of Boom that we got used to seeing in Seattle. They're 28th in the league in yards against, 27th in the league in points against. This is the week that the Eagles offense has to show up and show us that they are capable of dominating football games from start to finish. I don't want to see it for one quarter. I don't want to see it for only the second half. I need to see it from the moment the kickoff happens until the game ends. This offense needs to fire on all cylinders. How about a game with no punts? That'd be nice to see. Let's see this Eagles offense score on every damn possession on Monday night. And I know I'm asking for a lot, but that's what I need to see to get some hope that this offense is good enough to carry this football team. Because the other thing I need to see is on the other side of the football. And this defense has been bad all season long. And if you follow the show and you follow me, you know my bigger problem lies with the defense. I don't think they're good enough to get back to a Super Bowl. I don't think they have the personnel, no matter what the schemes are. And I know Sean Desai can do a better job. Not saying he can't. But the personnel they have on the defensive side of the football, I'm not sure, no matter what Sean Desai does, that it's good enough to get back. So what I need to see, and it has to start on Monday night, and I need to see it for the next 4 games, is Shaq Leonard needs to be close to what he was when he was an All-Pro in Indianapolis. I need to see Shaq Leonard come into this defense and make a huge impact. Because outside of him, the personnel is not changing, guys. It is what it is. We know who our safeties are. Can they play Sidney Brown a little bit more? Maybe. He looks like a promising rookie. But you're going to have to take the good and the bad with Sidney Brown. He's a rookie. He's aggressive. He's going to make mistakes at times. But I do like what I see from Sidney Brown. But you got to ease your expectations. He's going to make mistakes back there. He's raw. So outside of maybe Sidney Brown getting some more reps, the personnel's not changing. Your corners are who they are. Your defensive line is what it is. And as good as Hassan Reddick is, as good as Josh Sweat can be at times, they're playing a lot of snaps this year. A hell of a lot of snaps. They don't have the depth on the edge like they've had in previous years. BG's not playing anywhere near to what he was playing last year. I'm not talking about from a skill perspective or from a contribution perspective. I'm talking about how many snaps he's getting. Last year, he played about 50%. He's down to about 25% this year, BG. And Josh Sweat has taken those reps. So your defensive ends are who they are. Maybe Nolan Smith can start making an impact. But we're now 13 games into the season. So I need Shaq Leonard to show us that he can make an impact on this team. And again, just like their defense isn't great, their offense isn't great. But we'll break it all down on Monday. Make sure you're back here Monday at 10 o'clock. We'll look at the matchups. We'll dive deeper into the numbers. But we're running out of time, guys. So I want to end like I do every day. I know we already did a little today in Philadelphia sports history with the snowball incident. We talked about that, gave you a little history on that. But today in sports history, December 15th, 1935, the Detroit Lions won their first NFL championship, beating the New York Giants 26-7. And the reason I bring that one up, because they actually did okay for the next 22 years. They won a championship in 1935. They won a championship in 1952, 1953, 1957, and that's where it ends. Detroit Lions have not won a championship in 66 years. So that's why when we say the Detroit Lions will turn back into the Detroit Lions, that's what we're talking about. But guys, I appreciate all of you being here for this Power Hour. Love spending time with my crew. Hit that like button on the way out. Hit that share button. Make sure you're following on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, YouTube, everywhere. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Saturday and Sunday of NFL football. We'll be back here Monday, breaking down Monday Night Football, Eagles, Seahawks. And as always, guys, go Birds.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.